On the back of every clipboard is a timetable. The timetable governs the Nelson subdivision and the Boundary subdivision. The Roslyn subdivision and Slocan subdivisions are dark. In general, trains outbound from Nelson, those are eastbound on the Nelson subdivision and westbound on the Boundary subdivision, are scheduled, although extras may run. And all trains inbound to Nelson, those are the eastbound on the Boundary and the westbound on the Nelson subdivisions, are run as extras. On the train timetable, you'll also find a wealth of other information, including the train order office acronyms and the capacity of each of the sidings. These are the throttles that are going to be assigned to most of the mainline jobs. They're the Digitrax utility throttles, 4D for duplexing radio throttles. You will find them at the station which you're called. Normally they'll be programmed already for your lead locomotive that's indicated on your train instructions. If not, it's simply a matter of adjusting the little rotary indicators until you have the number of your lead locomotive and hitting either select or, if that doesn't work, steal. And you do that until you get this alternating red-green light. You're then able to control the locomotive. You can test whether you have control by using the light on the lead locomotive, and that's at function 0 to turn the headlight on and off. Duplexing is still a relatively new technology for Digitrax, so the coverage in some cases may be a bit spotty. We're still working on exactly where to put the radio receivers. Especially around Farron, you might find that coverage is a little weak. If you run into difficulty, the first thing to try is to lift the throttle above the height of your shoulder. That will put it into more direct contact with the radio receiver that's mounted in the ceiling. In the event that you still have problems with responsiveness, the next thing to try is by actually physically tethering the throttle to the layout. These are located in a number of different places. You just grab one, plug yourself in just like you would with a tethered throttle. I suggest if you're going to be doing a lot of stationary switching, specifically in the Slocan branch or the Craft switcher job at Castlegar, these may be handy because you'll get better responsiveness. So I've made my way to Nelson, which according to the call board is the location where train 87 departs. I've got my train instructions, I've read them, understand what's in them. Got my throttle, I've dialed up the lead locomotive of my consist, extra 8717, so 8717, that works. But I'm not ready to go yet. I still need a clearance from the dispatcher before I can depart the yard. I can check with the dispatcher and see what the status is. We'll cover the use of the phones in a few minutes. While I'm waiting for that, I can still use the time for other things. I can check the timetable and make sure that any trains that are to arrive or depart have already done so according to the arrival departure. This is where you sign in on arrival or sign out on departure. I can also look at all the labels on my cars and check those against the train instructions to make sure I understand which industries I need to switch along the way. Alright, now let's go check and see if our clearances have arrived. You go to the central pigeonhole board, which is located at the entrance to the railroad room, right above South Slocan, and you check. I'm a westbound out of Nelson, so I go into the clearance area, Nelson westbound, there we go. Train 87, and I have one order. So I can familiarize myself with those. I can staple them together with the stapler provided if I need, and I can attach them to my clipboard for future reference. I make my way back to Nelson, check with the yardmaster, which is the Nelson West location, and then I register the time of my departure on the arrival departure board, and I can proceed out onto the main line. So we've covered how to depart from Nelson, but what if you're originating at one of the other places, for example, Cranbrook, Grand Forks, or Trail? All of these are in staging. At this end of the layout, we have east and west staging. They're both hidden staging. You can find the train instructions here, and the procedure is basically the same as what you went through for Nelson. You can find the number of the locomotive that corresponds with the train instructions for your train on this indicator panel here, which indicates where the trains are and indicates how they move through the hidden staging. So if I'm, for example, an eastbound train, I can find it here, I can dial up the number for my locomotive, I can use this phone to call the dispatcher, I would go to the central place, pigeonhole board, to get my clearances, check the timetable, and then I can depart. Westbound, same procedure. Westbound enters the visible portion of the layout at Cascade, and I can actually see my westbound trains in staging using a mirror at the top of the, right above Cascade. Here's what you'll see looking into the mirror above Cascade. What we see here is a train leaving westbound staging and entering the passing siding at Cascade. The westmost switch of Cascade is actually in a hidden area, so you need to use the mirror to see it. However, there is a crossover conveniently located about halfway along the siding that allows you to switch out Cascade. South staging, which represents Tadanakan Trail, is located at the top of the small helix, which is just south of Castlegar. But the drill is basically the same. Check your train orders, get your clearances from the central pigeonhole board, and then indicate to the dispatcher using the phone that you're on your way. So I'm back out on the main line. I'm running train 87, which is the crash switcher, and I wanted to show you a few things about how I operate on the main line. That's for me is scale speed. My prototype ran about 20 miles per hour in the era I'm running, which on the analog throttles is 12 o'clock, or 50% on the DT400 throttles. I'm going through South Slocan Station, which is a train order station and train register station. I can check and see if I have any orders. I have no orders. Both of the LEDs are mounted green. However, I can see that I have a number of cars that are bound for Castlegar. And according to my train instructions, I'm to pick them up and deliver them to Castlegar. There are about 220 to 230 switches on the layout. The majority of them are manually thrown. They're Pico electrofrog switches, and simply by moving the points back and forth, there's an over-center that locks the points into position and makes electrical contact for the frogs. The switches on the second level, however, and in some of the more complicated areas of the first level, such as Castlegar, use tortoises. And those are thrown by DPDTs, and there are indicator lights on the control panels that indicate whether they're thrown or closed. To couple and uncouple, I use manual picks that are just simply inserted in between the KD couplers, twist, and the trains come apart. I won't pick up these cars today because of the video, but if I was actually running this job during an operating session, I would pick up these cars and proceed to Castlegar. So now I'm going to continue on my way. I do need to register for South Slocan, but I can register for that when I reach Castlegar because it's a combined register station. Make sure all the switches are thrown for me. I'm now approaching a yard master and yard limit signs. In Castlegar, as well as in Cascade and Nelson, there are yard limits, and you need to check with the people that are running the yards there to make sure you can enter. So I'm now approaching yard limits. Castlegar, much like South Slocan, is also a train order station. So here I can see I have orders because I'm a westbound and I have a red light. So now we'll go through the process of picking up orders when you're on the road. So train 87, the crash switcher, has arrived in Castlegar, and there's a number of things to point out about the current situation. The first is Castlegar, as well as South Slocan, are train order stations, so I need to OS that I've actually passed through South Slocan and arrived at Castlegar. They're in such close physical proximity, I'll do them both at the same time. In general, I would have done one after the other, or if I had switching to do and was doing switching at South Slocan, I would have OS when I arrived. The way you OS in the Columbian Western is using the intercom system. It is a normal phone intercom. It is not a party line. I will call the dispatcher by pressing B for menu, A for intercom, and then select the dispatcher. We can hear the dispatcher phone ringing. And wait for the dispatcher to pick up. They'll answer dispatch. I'll say dispatch, this is Castlegar. Train 87 is OSing at 1723. I've just passed South Slocan at 1715. Wait for the dispatcher to acknowledge, and then I can hang up. So that's how I would OS at any normal train order station. South Slocan and Castlegar are also register stations, and they're actually combined because they're so close in physical proximity. So I pull up the train register. There's also registers, as I pointed out, at Cascade as well as Troop. I will mark in my train number when I've arrived. Eventually when I depart, but I have a lot of switching to do, so that won't be for a while. And because of the configuration of Castlegar and Slocan, which is quite unique, I'll indicate which subdivision I'm arriving from, and when I leave, which one I'm leaving to. In both cases here, it'll be boundary. I'm arriving from the boundary, and I'll depart back on the boundary. But if I was arriving from trail on the Rossland, or if I was departing up South Slocan onto the Slocan subdivision, I would indicate those things. I'm in scheduled train, so I'm not displaying any flags. Indicate my lead engine number and my caboose number and the number of cars I have and initial. These train registers are very important because they indicate to following crews whether trains have arrived or departed. Finally, as I noted, I have orders. So I will go to the pigeonhole box, go to Castlegar West, which is for me because I'm a westbound at Castlegar, pick up my orders, and I'll read them. If I have any clarification that's necessary, I can pick up the phone and call the dispatcher and get them clarified. If not, I can just press acknowledge on the train order panel. A white LED will come on, a bell will ring on the dispatcher panel, indicating that I have received and acknowledged my orders. Only once I've pressed this acknowledge button will the dispatcher be able to clear the board against me and will I be able to proceed. So that's all the information, although there's quite a bit, but that's all of it necessary to run a train over the Columbia and Western. There's two last things to cover on this video, and they relate to if you're running the slow-can job. There's two things which I think are probably best handled by the superintendent. One of them is, of course, you're running along the boundary main line, and you need to go up the slow-can subdivision, so you need to branch off it at some point. And the way that's handled is actually by closing this swing gate at South Slocan Junction. It's probably best for me to do it if you're not comfortable. The swing gate actually comprises two legs of the Y at Slocan Junction. It locks pretty reliably, never had any problem with it, but if you're uncomfortable with it for any reason, ask me and I'll be happy to close it for you. This is a pretty heavily trafficked aisle. You will have switching here, so do what you can to try and get the switching done, move on your way. The other thing is, once you've completed all your switching at Slocan City and have your train loaded on the barge for Rosebery, please ask me to move the barge for you. Just because if anybody's going to put a train on the floor, I'd rather it be me than you. So I'd be happy to help. I'll come in, move the barge from the second level to the fourth at Rosebery. You can then make up your train and be on your way up to Nakusp. So that completes the overview video. We try and have lighthearted sessions. It's not too strict. Not too worried about conversations occurring in the layout room if they were to occur. The main thing is to have fun. I hope this video helps you in your preparation and your enjoyment of the operations of the Columbia and Western, and I look forward to seeing you. Should you have any questions, please email me at mark.dance@gmail.com. Look forward to seeing you soon.